Welcome to Live DAF, your online DAF Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's DAF Yomi, which is YOMA DAF Chaf. We're right at the Mishnah, which is 7 lines from the top of the Yomid. It says in the Mishnah, B'chol Yom, every day of the year, Termin es HaMizbeach, they would take Truma. This was called Trumas Hadeshen. They take a machta, a shovel, scoop out some of the ashes, and place it on the floor alongside the ramp, on the mizrach of the kevesh. This was one of the nisim, that the ashes were absorbed into the ground. So when did this procedure take place? B'chol yom, on a typical day, terminas hamizbeach, Trumas Hadeshen would take place early in the morning, right before Alois HaShachar, B'kriyas HaGever, at the point called Kriyas HaGever. One pshat in the Gemara is, it's referring to when the rooster crows, right before daylight arrives. Or somewhere around that time, bein lefanov, bein la'achar, whether before or whether after. So it was approximately around the Kriyas HaGever time. That was on a typical day, because they had pretty much a schedule which was full, but not overfull, and there was no need to start the avodah of the day too early. So you can start at that point, and that gives you enough time to tend to everything throughout the day. However, on Yom Kippur, they had to proceed, they had to advance the Tumas Hadeshen all the way to the Chatzos area. So it took place sometime after Chatzos of Leil Yom Kippur. The Gemara will explain the reason for this. Ubergolim, throughout the Yom Tovim, they would actually advance it even further. Me Ashmura Harishona. Now, as you may remember from the Gemara Brachos, every night has 3 Ashmuros. Ashmura literally means watches. So they are malachim, singing Shira to Hashem, and they rotate throughout the night. There are 3 groups of malachim. It's like mishmaris of the Kehanim. So the night is split into 3 parts. Each part's 4 hours. Suppose the night begins at 6. So the first Ashmura concludes at 10 o'clock. The Tumas Hadeshen during Yom Tovim took place at that point, so early in the night, sometime after the first Ashmura. Ubergolim Ashmura Rishayna, before the Azorah fills up with the crowds. This way they can get right through and deposit the ashes without interference. In fact, explains the Mishnah. They were concerned because even before Kriyas HaGever would arrive, before the rooster would crow, everything would be full. Ad Shaisa Azorah, Malayim Yisrael, the Azorah would have already been filled up with many Yidden coming to bring their karbanis. That's why they were magdim, Trumas Hadeshen, to that early point in the night. Says Rashi up on the top line of the Amud, Masnis. This was Trumas Hadeshen. Shu choyte min Hadeshen b'machta, he takes a machta, and he scoops up some of the ashes, pa machas. He does 1 scoop. Bein rav, bein ma'at, whether it ends up with a lot or a little, there's really no shear, but there is a minimum shear. It must be at least a malay kaimitz, like a fistful of ashes. He places it on the eastern side of the kevesh. It gets swallowed right in the spot into the ground. How do we know that you need at least a share of a kaimitz? By a mincha, you do harama with your kaimitz. Here as well it says vehirim is hadeshen. We make a gzera shavad lashon vehirim is a kaimitz amount at a minimum. This was the first item on the schedule, on the avodas beis hamikdash schedule. Samach took place at Kriyas HaGever, right nearby. Samach Kriyas HaGever, Lifnei Kriyas HaGever, whether before or after. So approximately around that time, they did Tumas Hadeshen. However, B'Yom Kippurim, Torah Mechatzois, they did it from Chatzos onward. Ubergolim, even earlier, Mashmura Rishayna, Shehi B'Shlishas Halayla. The end of the first Hashmura is right at the 3rd point, a third into the night. Kedei Amar Mesechas Brachos Gimel Mishmaros Havei Halayla. The Gemara Farish, the Gemara will give us the reason, Tama the Kula, why did they do it differently throughout the year, then on Yom Kippur, then on Yom Tovim. During Yom Tovim, by the time Kriyas HaGever arrives, it was filled up. Everybody would come bring their karbanos, so that they can bring it as law right after the Tamid. So, in conclusion, we learned about Tumas Hadeshen throughout the year, on Yom Kippur, and Yom Tov. So now, Hassam says the Gemara, we learned in a Mishnah elsewhere, a Mishnah in Zvach. Eivarim, we have limbs, parts of the karbanos, which still have some basar, some meat intact. However, we're speaking, it's not fresh, it's already been charred, partially burnt, dried up, and hardened by the fire. So these Eivarim, shepaku me'al gabe mizbeach. So they burst and bounced off the mizbeach. What do we do with that? Koidim chatzos, if it's still before midnight, yachzer, you have to put it back on the mizbeach to resume the burning process. Umoy alen ben, if one has a na from the Eivar at this point, he has committed me'ilah because it's still designated for the mizbeach. It's still called Kadsha Hashem. However, la'achar chatzos, if it's already after midnight, lo yachzer, there's no need to put it back. V'ein ma'alar behen, there's no me'ilah committed. Should somebody derive benefit from this Eivar, because it's already past the Aktorah time, it's already past the cutoff time, which is chatzos. It's no longer meant for the mizbeach and no longer considered Kadsha Hashem. Let's go over to Rashi, immediately to the right. Koydem chatzos laila, says Rashi, my alam ben. Koydem chatzos, einay chashav equal, because before chatzos, it's not yet considered equal. It's not been digested. So halachically speaking, it's not considered something consumed at this point. Be'ever sheyesh be'adayin mamish. Since we're speaking about an Eivar, which still has something tangible, some basar intact. So again, if we're speaking about true ashes, it's really deshen, then no matter when, throughout the night, it's already done, it's already consumed, there's no me'ilah. The mitzvah has been fulfilled in its entirety. But when we're speaking about something which still has some basar intact, so if it's fresh basar, not yet affected by the fire, then again, regardless of what point in the night we're speaking, even at the end of the night, you have to keep it on the mizbeach. Here we're speaking about that middle category, the midpoint. We have an Eivar that has some basar, but it's not ashes, nor is it fresh meat, unaffected by fire. It's been hardened, dried up. The Gemara in Zvachim refers to it as shiriri. It's been hardened and dried up by the fire. So since it's been partially burnt and it's already chatzos, it's done. It's considered halachically consumed. So here Rashi is speaking about before chatzos. It's not called equal. It's not considered consumed. Be'ever sheish ba'adayin mamish. Lefichach tzarech lachzir l'maruch. That's why it has to be returned to the arrangement of the mizbeach. V'kivan shaloi nasis kol mitzvasan. And at the same time, for the same token, since it's meant for the mizbeach, and its mitzvah hasn't yet completely been fulfilled, Kadsha Hashem Kirinu Bey. We refer to this as Kadsha Hashem V'is Bey Me'ilah L'nei Mimenu. And if one has anah, he has committed me'ilah. However, Achar Chatzos Ein Tzarech Lahachzor. There's no need to return it on the mizbeach. Shachatzois Oise Equal. Chatzos accomplishes equal. Midpoint in the night is considered the cutoff point. Past that is considered consumed. Regarding these, Eivarim Shemosh L'Baya'or, Eivarim which were gripped, affected by the fire. Even though there's still some basar intact, it's considered consumed, done and over with. There's no point on putting it back on the mizbeach. K'diolav l'kamei, at the Gemara soon, we'll learn from a pasuk. At the same time we say, since it's no longer considered a carbon and designated for mizbeach consumption, there's no me'ilah. Ve'ein ma'alim ben, k'dekayim lan. As we learned, kol shenasis mitzvosai ein ma'alim boy. An item with which the mitzvah has already been fulfilled, is no longer me'ilah. The kiv and the less beitzerach kavaya, since it's no longer needed for Hashem, for the mizbeach, like we don't call it Kachei Hashem, and therefore it's exempt from me'ilah. Me'ilah ksiv, this is no longer Kachei Hashem. So the Mishnah here gives us a rule of thumb. Again, if it's speaking about true ashes, then even at the earliest point in the night, it's considered consumed, no longer a carbon, no longer meal. On the other hand, if we speak about true Eivarim with true basar, intact, fresh meat, unaffected by fire, of course, regardless of when throughout the night we're speaking, it's still Kachei Hashem. But we're speaking here about Eivarim shemashla bayaur, as Rashi said. Fire has already affected it, already gripped it, already partially burnt it. So since it's been partially consumed and it's already past chatzos, the Torah tells us it's no longer designated for mizbeach consumption and is no longer regarded as Kachei Hashem. There's no longer milah. How do we know this halacha? Continues the Gemara. Minahan and mili. From where do we learn that chatzos accomplishes this equal? It's considered consumed at the point of chatzos. Amarav. Because we really seem to have a contradiction between two psukim. On the one hand, we have a pasuk which says, Kol halayla v'hikter. Actually, the pasuk reads as follows. If you have the Torah on the side, you have the entire pasuk which says like this: Tzaves Aaron v'zbanav leimar. This is the pasuk by Trumas Hadesh. Zois Torah sa'oila, hi ha'oila al moikta al mizbeach kol halayla ad ha'boiker. The pasuk concludes ve'esha mizbeach tukad boy. This is pasuk number 1. The oila is meant to remain al moikta, burning on its fire, the entire night. Kol halayla ad ha'boiker. The next pasuk number 2, speaks about Trumas Hadesh. But we have the words Vehirim es Hadeshen, Asher Toichel ha'esh, es ha'olam mizbeach. So the Kohen should approach the mizbeach and do Trumas Hadesh. Says Rav, we have a stira. Kol Savechad Omer. One pasuk says, Kol halayla v'hikter. It's meant to burn on the mizbeach the entire night. So the words Kol halayla v'hikter is just a paraphrase. It's not really the words in the pasuk. The pasuk says it should be al moita al mizbeach Kol halayla ad ha'boker ve'esha mizbeach tukad bay, indicating that there needs to be aktara throughout the entire night. So when you have this aver which has been partially burnt, no, keep it on the fire the entire night. We take a look at the next pasuk. V'kos of echad omer kol halayla v'herim. So since the psukim are next to each other, the second pasuk which has v'herim es hadeshen, speaking about the ability to go ahead and do Trumas Hadeshen already. When? Since it's the next pasuk, so we connect the two psukim, and Vehirim is a continuation of the previous pasuk, which is also speaking about the entire night. This seems to be telling us that Trumas Hadeshen can take place anytime throughout the night, as we have now in Mishnah. So what are you meant to do throughout the night? Is it like pasuk number 1, have things burn the entire night and wait with your Trumas Hadeshen, or do Trumas Hadeshen anytime throughout the night and don't allow it to burn itself out? So one pasuk says Kol halayla v'hikter, the other pasuk says Kol halayla v'herim. Okay, so what do we do? How do we solve this conflict? Chalkei, make a achleik, split the night into two. Chetzel Aktara, the first night until Chatzos, is meant for Aktara, for burning. Chetzel Harama, past Chatzos, the other half of the night, that's meant for Trumas Hadesh. Says Rav, this is the Makar that the halacha mentioned in the Mishnah. Then we have these Eivarim which still have some tangible mamoshes to them, some meat on top of them, and they have been already affected by fire, mashla ben ha'or. So we're not speaking about pure ashes, totally consumed, totally burned through. Where certainly there's no issue. Of course, you can do Trumas Hadeshen on them throughout the night, anytime. On the other hand, we're not speaking about a worm which has fresh basar on it, because that you have to leave on the mizbeach throughout the entire night. So we're not speaking about case 1 or 3. So we have case 2 right in the middle. You have an aver which is partially charred, partially burnt. What is the Torah telling us? Chatzos is the cutoff point. Until Chatzos, you have to leave it, you have to return on the Mizbeach, have it burned through. But once Chatzos reaches, that's the cutoff point. The Haktarah time has already expired, and now you can perform Trumas Hadeshin even from this Aver. That's how Rashi learns. Tosfos disagrees. He says Trumas Hadeshin can only be from true ashes. Rashi learns, no. The Torah determines and decides and considers this as Deshin. This Aver, which still has some meat on it. But since it's been partially burnt, and it's already past burning time, we regard it as Deshin, as ashes, and there's no need for it to be on the Mizbeach. Chetzi laharama, it is now designated for Trumas Hadeshin. Says the Gemara, Masr Rav Kahana, does I have a problem with this? You tell me that within the Psukim we find that from Chatzos starts the time of Trumas Hadeshin? How could that be? We have a Mishnah which tells us otherwise. You can do Trumas Hadeshin at the earliest point of the night. You can begin Mashmur Rishayna. Or as it sounds from Tosfos Amud Beis, really Trumas Hadeshin can be done anytime throughout the night, even 8 o'clock at night. But they would do it for Mashmur Rishayna. How could that be? You Rav, just brought me a pasuk. We had a stira, and then we had a teretz. Chatzos is the cutoff point, and the start point for Trumas Hadeshin. Masr Rav Kahana, b'chol yoyim terminus hamizbeach. On a typical day, Trumas Hadeshin will take place when? B'kriyas hagever. Sometime around Kriyas hagever, or Yisamach loy, ben l'fana, ben l'achrav. Ub'yom kippur, mechatzos, u'bergalim, me'ashmur rishon. So this was the Mishnah, which seems to indicate that Trumas Hadeshin can take place anytime throughout the night. Now, according to you, you're suggesting to us that the Psukim come and tell us that the earliest point for Trumas Hadeshin is Chatzos. Mei Chatzos de'oraisahi. How can we advance it? How can we do Trumas Hadeshin before Chatzos? So Rav Kahana didn't agree to Rav's distinction. Rav is drawing a distinction between what type of material we're speaking about, right? The true ashes can be tended to at the beginning of the night. You can do Trumas Hadeshin from true Deshin right at the beginning of the night. When Rav presented that Yachloiku, split the night into two, he was learning it was specific to this type of Aver. An Aver which is still somewhat intact. Chatzos is the cutoff point which allows Trumas Hadeshin even on that. Rav Kahana didn't agree to that chiluk. If the pasuk speaks about Trumas Hadeshin beginning from Chatzos onward, then it applies to anything, even to true Deshin. Ashes which have been completely burned through, in which case, how does the Mishnah allow Trumas Hadeshin before Chatzos? Elam Rabbi Yochanan, you have to learn differently. So although Rabbi Yehuda is coming to explain the same Mishnah as Rav was, but he's going to show that the source, the halacha is sourced a bit differently than Rav. Elo Rabbi Yehuda like this. From the fact that the pasuk says Kol Halayla, this is pasuk number 1. Oil is meant to burn on the Moikdal, on Mizbeach, Kol Halayla. Then we have 2 additional words, Ad HaBoiker. Now everybody knows, night extends until morning. Why does the pasuk see a need to add that additional description? Ad HaBoiker. If it would only say Kol Halayla, any day I should Ad HaBoiker, wouldn't I know on my own? Has to burn until morning. Why add those 2 words? It says Rabbi Yehuda like this. Don't go ahead and split the night into 2. No. We have pasuk number 1 discussing how much, to what extent the carbon has to burn on the Mizbeach until a point that it has to remain al moiked the entire night. Kol Halayla. Why? We're speaking about an Aver which has basar mamoshes, intact, fresh meat, unaffected by fire. The whole night on the Mizbeach. We have pasuk number 2, which was describing the mitzvah Trumas Hadeshen. Once again, it's Kol HaLayla Ve'erim. The entire night is eligible for Trumas Hadeshen. What type of deshen are we speaking about? True deshen. True burnt through ash material. Over there's no restriction. You can begin at the earliest point in the night. In pasuk number 1, we find 2 extra words, Adaboiker. Says Rabbi Yehuda, that is referring to this in-between state. The aver that the Mishnah there was referring to. The aver which still has some basar intact, but it's not fresh meat, not unaffected by fire. It's mashal ben or, it's been charred somewhat. This middle state is being addressed with these words, Adaboiker. How's that? Tain boiker. The boiker shalayla. Add another morning to the typical morning of night, meaning the typical morning ends at the end of the night, at daybreak. Add another morning to that, which precedes that. It's another way of saying, establish another cutoff point, which precedes morning, in advance of morning, which is chatzos. And the aver, which has been partially consumed, has to be burning until chatzos, and past that, you're okay for Trumas Hadeshen. So rather than follow Shitas Rav, who interpreted the pasuk differently, he said we have a stira. Pasuk number 1 speaks about burning the entire night. Pasuk number 2 speaks about doing Trumas Hadeshen throughout the entire night, which is incompatible. Split the night into 2. The first part is meant for burning. Second part for Trumas Hadeshen. Kasha was. Then you cannot do Trumas Hadeshen at the first point of the night, which contravenes the Halacha Now Mishnah. Rechon responds by saying, we'll tweak it a bit. Pasuk number 2, which spoke about Trumas Hadeshen the entire night, is true and correct, referring to ashes. So it all depends what we're speaking about, what material we're addressing. True deshen can be tended to the entire night. Trumas Hadeshen is kosher the entire night, provided we have true ash material. The first pasuk number 1, burn the entire night, speaking about fresh meat. Within the first pasuk, we have an additional factor. We have the words Ad HaBoiker, which tell us there's a cutoff point which precedes morning. It's referring to chatzos. And that's referring to the material which is somewhere in the middle. Not completely burnt, not totally fresh, but mashal ben or, somewhat charred, somewhat burnt, and you have to keep it burning until chatzos, and past that, don't worry about it. Continues the Gemara, Hilkach. Okay, so now that we know that when it comes to Trumas Hadeshen from real ashes, there really is there's no cutoff point. You can do it throughout the entire night. Kol HaLayla Ve'erim. Now we understand the Mishnah. B'chol Yom, on your typical day throughout the year, Termas HaMezbeach, some take out these words, Termas HaMezbeach, B'kriyas HaGever. The point of Kriyas HaGever, Oisamach Loi, Ben Fanav Ben La'achrav Sagi, that's perfectly fine. To accommodate the avoid on the following day, you don't have to begin too much earlier than that. As long as early enough, right before Lisa Shachar, there's ample time remaining for the karbanos to be brought the following day. So that was common practice, standard procedure. However, B'Yom Kippurim, we have an additional factor, the ikachul of the Kohen Gadol. We're concerned about the Kohen Gadol being weak on account of his fasting, staying up all night. I want to help him out. Avdina mechatzos. We back up the Trumas Hadeshen from chatzos onward. The point is to space things a little bit. He doesn't feel the pressure, so we begin early. Interesting, Tosfos here says mashma that even Trumas Hadeshen, which was avodas laila, could only be done by the Kohen Gadol. That's what it sounds like from Al Gemara. So we do it early enough, so he has enough time to rest between one avodah and the other. There's another shita in Tosfos. He says not necessarily the Kohen Gadol would have to do this. The reason why we advance it on Yom Kippur, because of the chosh of the Kohen Gadol, it means like this: we want to have everything arranged and ready. Trumas Hadeshen, arrange the firewood on the Mizbeach, etc., etc., with enough time so that we can begin the avodah right in the morning, and he can get going before he gets weak and hungry and thirsty. So according to the Epshan Tosfos, it's not so clear that the Kohen Gadol has to do Tumas Hadeshin on his own. But the point is, we advance it to get things going early enough before he arrives at a state of weakness. That explains Yom Kippur. Third thing was Yom Regalim. Or Regalim during Yom Tovim the Nefishi Yisrael. Because of the multitudes of Yisrael and Nefishi Karbanis, we have so many Karbanis here. Avdin and Mashmur Rishayna, we back it up all the way to Ashmur Rishayna. And the way Rashi explains it, it's because there's so much deshen, so much ashes because of the many karbanis brought on the Yom Tovim. So we're makdim the Trumas Hadeshin me'ashmiras harishayna. So once that's behind us, we can go ahead and get rid of pile up all the ashes onto the middle, make a big pile, and perhaps take it off from the Mizbech, take it outside the city. Incidentally, I once read that about 100 years ago they still had this pile of ashes right outside Yerushalayim. Amazing, and everybody knows this from the Karbanis, Beis HaMikdash. It's been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, right outside the Yerushalayim, towards the north. And if you look at the Gemaras in Zvachim, it seems that that's the correct place for Tumas Hadeshin, and not Tumas Hadeshin, when they transported the Deshin out of the Mizbeach, out of Yerushalayim, al Shefach Hadeshin. So Tumas Hadeshin was just a scoop right near the Mizbeach. But then when they had a pile up of ashes, they would actually remove it. And the pasuk in the Torah says, "V'hoitzis Hadeshin chutz la'machna," he takes it out, the machna, and it will just pile up there for many, many years. And they had this pile of Deshin sitting there. And in fact, the word of this pile reached one of the big tzaddikim in Europe, and he had somebody send him some of that Deshin, and they said they found a horn, a shofar of an animal sitting in there, and when he saw it, he was so touched and inspired. He mamash felt and touched a piece of the carbon of the Mizbeach. Of course, there was no me'il on that because it's already nas mitzvah, it's been burnt and consumed. In any case, that's what they would do. They would take the piles of ashes and transport it outside of Yerushalayim. And that's why they had to begin early in the night to allow for all this to happen. And this was the concern during Yom Tovim. The Tosfos Shana has a different pshat. He says very simply, because there were so many people arriving, it was just crowded, and they want to get things taken care of before the crowd arrives, in which case it will make it inconvenient to start transporting the Tumas Hadeshin through the Azara and to the floor. This way, take care of it before it fills up with Yisrael. So that explains why by Regalim, Avdinan Ma'ashmeris Rishayna, we do it early enough, because the Ketani time, as Mishnah itself explains, Magas, Kriyas HaGeber hadn't even arrived, we hadn't even reached that point. Azora Malaya Miyisrael. So let's make a summary. At this point, we have Tumas Hadeshin, which took place B'chol Yom at the Kriyas HaGeber point. We're going to see in the Gemara there are two shittas, whether a Gever is a person or a rooster. On Yom Kippur, it was the Chatzais point, because of Chulsha the Kohen Gadol, Regalim Ashmaras Rishayna, because of the multitudes of Yisrael. And we also learned about what type of material, carbon material, is eligible for Tumas Hadeshin. So if it's an aver that has true and basar, fresh meat intact, then it has to burn throughout the night. However, we learned that Chatzais is considered a cutoff point. It is oise equal. It gives it a status as though it's been consumed, halachically consumed. Regarding these Eivarim Shemosh L'ben Or, Eivar which has been partially consumed by fire, we say Chatzos is the cutoff point. After Chatzos, it's no longer considered Kachei Hashem, and there's no Milah. How do we know this? We have Rav and Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rav, we learn from the fact that we have a stira. Pasuk number 1 speaks about burning the entire night. Pasuk number 2 speaks about doing Tumas Hadeshin throughout the entire night. How do we resolve this conflict? We make a yachleiku. Up at the Chatzos, it has to burn. After Chatzos, it's eligible for Tumas Hadeshin. Now, regarding true Deshin, true burnt out ash, then that's eligible for Tumas Hadeshin the entire night. And that's learned from the second pasuk, Kol Halayla V'Heira, which tells us that this type of material is eligible for Trumas Hadeshin, regardless of what point in the night we're holding. Rabbi Yehuda learns a bit differently. He says, how do we know Chatzois is the cutoff point for those Avarim which are partially intact? Because in Pasuk number 1 it says, the oil is meant to be burning the entire night ad ha-boiker. Ad ha-boiker tells us, not literally until morning, but add another morning to the standard morning, meaning advance it a bit, and we go back to Chatzois. Chatzois is the expiry point for these Avarim, after which they're no longer considered Kachi Hashem. Regarding true Deshen, true burnt out material, that is considered completely Deshen, and mitzvah has been completely fulfilled, regardless of what point in the night we're holding. And Trumas Hadeshin on that is mutter the entire night. And that's learned from the second pasuk, which tells us Kol halayla vehera. Continues the Gemara. We learned about Kriyas HaGever. My Kriyas HaGever. What exactly is this referring to? Rava Amar Kara Gavra. Kriyas HaGever means the man, the Gever, called out. So this was the man who would call out in the Beis Hamikdash, the reveille fellow, get up to do the avodah. That's Kriyas HaGever. And at that point, they would do Trumas Hadeshin on a typical day throughout the year. Rabbi Shila Amar, he says Kriyas HaGever was a different method of waking up. Kar Tarnagoyla. It's a tarnagol, it's the rooster crowing. That's how they would wake up. And that's when they did Trumas Hadeshin. Says the Gemara, Rav Ikla La'asrei Rabbi Shila. So when I have an interesting story that took place between Rav and Rabbi Shila, who had this machlekes regarding the definition of Kriyas HaGever. Rav says it was a person. Rabbi Shila says it was a rooster. So Rav Ikla La'asrei Rabbi Shila. Rav visited the town of Rabbi Shila. They didn't recognize him. They didn't know that he was Rav. La'yahava Amoira. That day there was no Amoira. Amoira is referring to a meturgamon, a fellow who would stand near the Rosh Hashiva during the drasha, during the shir. The Rav would whisper some words in his ear, in Lashon Kodesh, and he would go ahead and had a powerful voice. With his booming voice, he would announce the halacha, the drasha, to all those assembled, and he would interpret it to Aramaic, to the language of the land. That day, it so happens that the Amira was unavailable. L'yahava Amira, l'meik malei the Rabbi Shila, to stand before Rabbi Shila. So Rav offered his services. Come, Rav, alay. So Rav positioned himself near Rabbi Shila, and Rabbi Shila began his drasha, and he mentioned in his drasha these words, Kriyas HaGever, in Lashon Kodesh. And Rav, true to his opinion, interpreted it as the way he interpreted it. It became a farish, and Rav explained, my Kriyas HaGever, what does that mean? Kara Gavra, the man called out. When Rabbi Shila heard this, he says, well, what's going on? This is not what I had in mind. Amalei Rabbi Shila, V'lei Mamar, why don't you say Kara Tarnagoyla, the chicken crowd, the rooster crowd? So Rav responded with a quotable quote. Amalei tells him, Avuv is some type of instrument. L'chari, to free people, to B'nei Chayrin, people who have a true appreciation for the sounds of music. Zemer, to them it sounds like music. However, l'gardoi, to weavers, people don't necessarily have an ear for music. They don't accept it from him. They don't consider that to be music. I think of it as some type of drum. So you have to have an appreciation for it, to appreciate it. So how does it pertain to us? Rav continued, Ki imna alei, to Rabbi Chia, when I stood before Rabbi Chia, Farishna, and I explained my Kriyas HaGever, Kara Gavra, and I interpreted it as follows. Kriyas HaGever means the man called out. He didn't complain, he appreciated my approach. And you protest, you tell me, Ema Kara Tarnagoyla? You should rather say, the chicken crowed? Amalei, now Rabbi Shila caught on. He says, Marni Ravi, you're Rav? This is not, it's not appropriate. You should be serving me. Nei Nachmar, why don't you sit down? Amalei, Rav responded with another quotable quote. Amri Inshi, people say as follows, Itagrasle. If you've been hired by this person, to work for him throughout the day, comb out, Amrei, his wool, even though it's a degrading job. That's your job. You committed to work for him throughout the day. Here as well, once I started interpreting a drasha, let me conclude. Some say this is how he responded. Malin b'kodesh, v'lei meridin, meant to upgrade in matters of kedusha, not downgrade. It's unfitting for the covet hadrasha that I should step down, and somebody of lower stature should take over. So this concludes the machlekes in Rav, who says Kara Kriyas HaGever is Kara Gavra, and that's how they woke up the Beis Hamikdash. They had a person calling out. Whereas Rabbi Shila maintained it was a chicken, a rooster, which did the job. We're going to have a riot to either sheet. Tanya say the Rav, Tanya say the Rabbi Shila. We have a brayso in support of either sheet. Tanya say the Rav. We have a brayso which supports Rav. Gvini, that was his name. Gvini Cruz. He was the reveille man. He would call out in the morning. What would he say to get everybody up, to inspire them, to motivate them? Imdu kahanim lavdaschem. Kahanim, get up to do your avodah. Uleviim, you also get up to get to your stage to do the shira. Yisrael l'mamadchem. Yisrael, get up to accompany the karbanos. He had such a booming voice. V'hayakoyloi nishma b'shalosh parsos. His voice would carry through 3 parsos. A parsos is 4 mil. So we're dealing with about 12 miles. That's how far his voice would carry. In fact, it was a mas about Agrippas HaMelech. He was traveling on the road, and he heard his voice 3 parsos away. And he was so impressed. When he came back home, he sent him some gifts. So the more became, despite the fact that Gvini Cruz had this booming voice, the voice of Kohen Gadol was even more powerful. As we learned, it so happened once that when the Kohen Gadol said the Nusach Avidu on Hashem, it was so loud and booming, V'nishma koila b'Yericha, you could hear his voice down in Yericha, which was far away. How far? V'amar, Rabbi Ramachana or Yechna, Mishalayim l'Yericha, how far was it? Yud Parsi, it was 10 parsos, way further than the Gimel parsos of Gvini Cruz. Not only that, V'af agav dacha ikechulsha. And in Kippur, there's an element of weakness. Can go to the middle of the day of fasting, he hadn't slept. He's very weak. And Gvini Cruz didn't have to deal with that element. He was up in the morning, fresh, all perked up, and still the Kohen Gadol's voice carried further. Another difference, despite the fact that Yom Kippur was middle of the day, over there is still nighttime, and voice carries further at night. Don't Rav Levi. Why is it that a person's voice doesn't really carry as much by day, as much as it carries at night? The reason is because of the sun rolling over and moving along. The Galgal Chama bores through the Rakia, like a carpenter, Hamanasar, Barazam bores through, cuts through planks of wood. And that subtle rumbling inhibits the voice carrying too far. This sort of sawdust generated by the YOMA says the shemesh, boring through the Rakia, la shmei. It's called a la. So it's barely tangible, barely heard or whatever, but it's there. And it interferes with the traveling of the voice of the Kohen Gadol. This is what Nebuchadnezzar was referring to when he said, "V'chol dayori ara," all the inhabitants of the inhabitants of the land, all the multitudes, kilo chashivim, like nothing compared to you. So simply meaning it's like nothing. But the way we're darshaning, law is referring to this sort of sawdust material generated by the sun traveling, cutting through the Rakia, and all the Dayori Aram are merely considered like insignificant, like this law particle. Now there were several ways to explain this Gemara. Some maintain that we're referring to spiritual elements, spiritual aspects. But others say that, primarily we're speaking about Dvarim Ruchnim, but they do have some subtle effect even down here on earth. In fact, the Gemara says it prevents the coil of the Kohen Gadol, or the coil of a person, from traveling too far by day. So apparently there's some sort of slight rumbling that is present in the background. In fact, I was once at the Ontario Science Center here in the city, and they have this section dedicated to space. There's a small corner there where something very unbelievable. There's this instrument that's measuring in real time the cosmic rays, these electromagnetic waves bombarding us from outer space. And we're protected because we have the ozone layer, the atmosphere, whatever it is. But these rays and these things shooting around are very powerful and very high voltage. And we know what these things are. These are likus. This is the power of Hashem expressing itself throughout the world, which saves the world. So that's the koiches kulam, as we learn in Sfarim. The Likim is bala koiches kulam. That's the kavanah. The Shulchan Aruch brought down that you have to have kavanah. Likim is bala koiches kulam. So by Krishma, at least by Krishma, you should think Likim is bala koiches kulam. Koiches means the power that's presented, that's expressed throughout the world and just flying around. These are the rays, the pulses of energy, the cosmic rays, whatever it is that's found throughout the world. So perhaps something to do with this. The Galgal Chama that's presenting himself in this manner of this glow, this sawdust, these rumbling noises and rays and all types of electric pulses pulsating through the world. Tanarabban. Now the Mashal explains this following Gemara as follows. A person can take a look at the sun, and it's all its might and glory. What a powerful phenomenon. And get impressed. Or sometimes a person can get impressed by the notable accomplishments of human endeavor. We see Malchus Roimi, how powerful they were. So there's room for getting impressed. It says the Gemara, don't get impressed so quickly. Il Gal Chama. So it's referring to a person who was impressed by human accomplishments. For instance, Rome, at the time, ran the world. They were a world power. Don't be impressed by Rome. Il Gal Chama. Not for the fact that the Galgal Chama, its power, might, and glory, what happens at the end of the day? Subsides, sets, darkens. So you see, physical power is limited. Not for the fact that we see that in nature, not for the fact that we observe the limits of nature's power, nishma koil hamoina shel roimi. The koil coming from the hamoina, the multitudes of roimi, meaning the power expressed by human accomplishment, would be so impressive, and one would be so overwhelmed and overcome by that, if not for the fact that he sees that the sun is limited. The fact that it's so powerful, look, it's still limited. In fact, the Mashal says that human endeavor, especially the Goyim, specifically the Goyim, they're connected to the sun. Yisrael connected to the moon. Goyim draw their sustenance from the sun, and that's why we draw a parallel between Rome and the sun. We say, look, the sun is limited, and so is Rome. The Brisa continues. Sometimes a person is impressed by the sun, by the power of nature. And we say as follows. Take a look at the power of human being, how limited it is. Look, where's Rome today? Thrown into the dustbin, the trash bin of history. Not for the fact that the coil of the multitudes of the power of Rome, which is far gone. So we see that human power is very restricted and limited. That tells you, don't be impressed by nature either. If not for that, nishma kol gal chama, a person will be totally overwhelmed by the koil gal chama. That's the point. Draw a parallel from one to the other. If you're impressed by nature, take a look how limited, how feeble human power is. And the same regarding everything in nature. Conversely, if you're impressed by human endeavor, human accomplishment, don't be so impressed. Take a look at the sun. Look how powerful it appears, but how limited it really is. There are three voices, three sounds, and it appears that we're speaking about spiritual phenomena. They reverberate throughout the entire world. The sun traveling, power of Rome, And the coil of neshama, when it leaves the body, the coil, which happens when one is born. Rashi says, referring to the malach in charge of watering the world, so he calls out to the water sources, and that's the coil ridaya. Why is it ridaya? So Rashi says, because this malach is in the image of a shur, of an ox, and we find in Targum Onkelos, lo sachrish, lo sirdi. So ox is somehow referred to as ridaya, ridya, and that's the shur, the malach, whose sound reverberates throughout the world. Remember when I was young, I once took a look at some sefer, a book, speaking about Torah and science. They said, well, don't be impressed by science. Chazal already knew everything that we know today. They knew about radio waves. There's a Gemara in YOMA Chafalef, Af Ridaya. I had a different pshat in the Gemara. Ridaya as radio waves, which travel throughout the world. Maybe that's another pshat. So we have this comprehensive list of koilos, bo rabbanon rachmin, rabbanon davened, a neshama b'shah she'yotz ma'guf, regarding this neshama, expressing this powerful sound when it leaves the guf, and apparently it's uncomfortable, embarrassing, but tlua, and they canceled this phenomenon. In any case, we had a raya to Rav regarding Kriyas HaGever. What exactly is this? What they used to wake up in the Beis HaMikdash? Rav says a person will get up and announce, "Get up!" And we have a brisa that supported Rav. Rabbi Shila says it was a rooster crowing. Now says the Gemara, Tanya Kavasi Rabbi Shila, we have a right to Rabbi Shila from a brisa. Hayitzil derech. One gets up early and sets out on a journey. Koydem Kriyas HaGever. It's still before the rooster crows. It's still dark. You should be concerned. Protect yourself from azikim. Don't travel at this point. Dama B'Roisha. He's accountable for any consequence. Rabbi Yeshua Aimer, Achi Shana. He should wait until he hears a second crowing of the rooster. Some say Achi Shalish until it does it 3 times. At that point, it's safe to travel. It's already close enough to daytime. Mazikim are no longer prevalent. Ube'ezed tarnagal amru, specifically what type of tarnagal were they speaking about? But tarnagal beinani, the typical one, the average one, not the one that crows too early, not the one that delays, the one that does it somewhere in the middle. Typical average tarnagal. We see from here that Kriyas HaGever is referring to a rooster crowing, and is a raya to Rabbi Shila's opinion. Let's do a quick chazara. We learned about the mitzvah of Trumas Hadeshen, which was the first thing it did by the avodah of the Beis HaMikdash. They took a machta, scooped out some of the deshen, went over to the mizrach of the kevesh, put it on the ritzpah, and it was nivla b'mkayim, swallowed right there. Mishnah tells us 3 zmanim. Typically it was Kriyas HaGever time, and Yom Kippur was Chatzos, and Regolim even earlier than that. So Kriyas HaGever, we have 2 pshatim, whether it's a person or a rooster crowing. Yom Kippurim was from Chatzos, and the reason was because of Chush the Kohen Gadol. They want to begin the process early to reduce the pressure. On Yom Tovim, it was even earlier. It was from the Ashmur Rishayna onward, and the reason was because there were Haber Yisrael coming, whether it's because it made it crowded and difficult, or because, as Rashi explains, due to the overabundance of ashes in the Mizbeach, which they had to tend to after Trumas Hadeshen, so they had to allow enough time before morning arrived and the Hakrava arrived. Therefore, they did Trumas Hadeshen earlier in the night. We learned that Chatzos is oisa equal by the Evorim Shemoshel Ben Ha'or. Rav says we learn this from the pasuk Al Moikta Al Laila, which tells you burn throughout the night. The next pasuk says do Haramas Hadeshen throughout the night. How do we resolve the conflict? Chatzos. Chatzos is the cutoff point when it comes to these Evorim, which have been partially consumed. There's no longer need to have them burning on the Mizbeach. Rabbi Yehuda says it's learned from the fact that the pasuk adds the word Anabayker to tell you that these Evorim don't have to remain throughout the night. Rather, add a Bayker to the standard Bayker, which means create a cutoff point preceding morning, which is Chatzos. So either way, we learn from here that regarding Evorim, which still have some basar intact, but it's been partially consumed, partially hardened and dried up by the fire, since it has partial consumption and it's already past Chatzos, don't worry about it. Regarding true ashes, which are completely burned through, then you don't even have to wait to Chatzos. You can do Trumas Hadeshen throughout the entire night, and that's learned from the second pasuk, pasuk number 2, which tells us Behirim is kol halayla. Now, what does kriyas hagever mean? Rav says kara gavra. Gever is a person. This person who is to get up and call out to the Kohanim, Levim, and Israelim, get up to do avodah as Hashem. We have a brayso which supports that pshat. Rabbi Shila, on the other hand, maintained kriyas hagever is referring to the rooster crowing. We have a brayso from a brayso to the shita. We have the story where Rav came to the town of Rabbi Shila, and he offered his services, and then he interpreted the words of Rabbi Shila in accordance with his approach. And there was this back and forth as to what is the correct meaning of kriyas hagever. We learned about the booming voice of the Kohen Gadol and of Givini Karus. We learned about the koilos, which reverberate throughout the world. Much hatzlacha to you, Kol Tov.